Hello, teacher. It's Junior in here. So I'm going to talk about the book, which is named Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela was born in July 18th in 1918. So when he was born, he was named Rohilaha, and he was one of 13 brothers because their parents had 13 children. So Nelson Mandela, when he was 7 years, was the first person of the family to go to school. And when he was at school, his English teacher named Nelson, which is an English name. When Nelson Mandela was 9 years old, his father died. His father was a chief of Thembu people. And for that reason, both his mother and Nelson had to move to the house of the Nelson's uncle, which was Chief Chief Rohintaba. Yeah, and he was a chief also of Kinu. In Kinu is a place in South Africa. Well, so that's why. And when Nelson was there, Nelson learned about history and also geography of South Africa, and therefore Nelson hears some democratic speeches or democratic talks about what his uncle said with other leaders. So, that's in that case. When Nelson Mandela was 21 years old, he went to the most famous university in South Africa, and he studied definitely laws because he loved laws, political rights, African rights as well, and he always was against the injustice. Well, when he was at school, no, when he was at university, he became student representative, but he was prohibited to do that because his teacher said you don't have to do that. And then the teacher comments the situation to his tutor or mentor, which was his uncle. And then his uncle has said to him the same: you need to stop. And also, his uncle wanted to arrange the life of Nelson with the marriage. Well, the chef Rohintaba wanted to find a girl for Nelson Mandela to marry. But finally, Nelson decided to escape to Johannesburg, which was the golden city in that time. And he started to work in it. Well, Nelson Mandela escaped because he was disagree about the uncle alternative. We watch arrange the marriage. So when Nelson was at Johannesburg, they decided to work, and he worked in a office, yeah, about related with democratic things, laws, political rights, those things. And he knew his best friend, who was Oliver Tambo. And always they talk about how they would like to change the way that that the government is inputting some or putting some laws or rights. Also, talking about government, the government put a law which was apartheid. Apartheid means that both black and white people need to be separated. So, but well, always obviously it was about black people because black people wasn't allowed to people weren't allowed to be with white people, even public spaces, restaurants, schools also, what else? Beaches as well, and some works which was specifically for white people. And it's so the situation was the worst for Africans, I think, because they had to have a ticket for move around the city, which was Johannesburg, and it was because of the government. So it's absurd and stupid, but well, um, Nelson definitely was against this law, and then he decided to start. He decided to protest against that, and he was arrested. Why? Because he wanted to change the law. It's definitely bad. But well, in August 1962, Nelson Mandela. Well, before that, Nelson Mandela married with Evelyn, and they had two children. And I think like 10 years left, he married with another girl, which was Winnie, and they had again, two sons again. Well, in August 1962, um, he was getting a party about celebrating for celebrating freedom. What happened? Nelson Mandela was arrested, and he was taken. Yeah, he was took to Iceland, Johannes Island. Yeah, Iceland was a place which African leaders were placed, and in cells. Yeah, like cells, and they was private of their freedom. So it was, and Nelson Mandela wasted 27 years on those cells. 27 years. But in 1990, the president of South Africa said that Nelson Mandela needed to be released because that president knew that Nelson Mandela um, had done some good things for African people. And in 1993, Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa. And also, he made a speech for about 22,000 people. And it was about talking about freedom, talking about apartheid as well, because he wanted to change the rules of the game, which was I can say previously played. Well, a few years later, Nelson Mandela decided to have a quiet life because when he was involved in laws, he couldn't spend time with his family. So for that reason, he preferred to have a quiet life. Nelson Mandela organized also a concert to celebrate the freedom, and also in between those artists, Beyonce was there. Finally, Nelson Mandela died on this 5th December 2013. Yeah, in December 3rd, 2013, Nelson Mandela died. And he was pretty remembered for by African people because of his legacy and about all the things that he made. However, in South Africa, the injustice doesn't stop. The injustice continue. For that reason, it's difficult to notice how is the the dynamic of those of African people. Um, Perhaps there are some good things of South Africa. Um, there are some things that need to be changed. Thank you.